Live. Here we are. Cloud Foundry After Dark. James
But
Waters.
just the two of us, really. I don't even think we need to. Like, it's the
Just,
holidays, everyone's away, so this is like the hangout that never happened.
just the good old boys.
If a hangout happens over a holiday break and no one watches it, does it still happen?
We'll find out. We'll see. It's still young. The night is young. It's only 11 p.m. over here on the East Coast.
Hedrick Coleman says just not East Coast friendly. Hitting the sack. Data ops begins in 7 hours.
I know those feels, but there's no school tomorrow, so YOLO.
I'm working all week. I'm excited.
Well, I'll probably do some work too because work needs doing.
Yeah. So what happened this year? Anything? Anything?
Seems like there was some Cloud Foundry stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we started last year, and we'd been an R&D open source project for 2.5 years since 2011.
It started before that, didn't it?
I'm saying it started publicly in 2011.
Okay.
So we'd been around since 2011, and then I remember last Christmas was super intense because I was flying home from family and writing emails to everyone, getting ready to do our first kickoff to tell the field like this is a product, and everyone's like, "Hey, it's a new category. What's this going to be like?" And
But as long as we're looking backwards, I think this is one of the things that is appealing to me about the Cloud Foundry story is that it wasn't just sort of this thing that was like let's build a platform, but it was already kind of built for 2 years before anyone really saw the light of day, right?
I mean, in a way, I was just thinking about this tonight. Cloud Foundry was so ahead of its time; it was insane. Like it was using Linux containers way long ago. That's hot now. It had a declarative deployment engine, which people are still waking up to declaratives, like to things like Bosch. Like that's still like people don't even know they have that problem yet. It's pretty hilarious until they use Bosch and they're like, wow, how did I do this before? And it was a cloud service from day one, which I don't think there's ever been another open source project that was a cloud service from the moment it launched ever. Like maybe Google Kubernetes because they've got, I mean, that's the closest thing to us that they launched it as a Google Compute service.
Yeah, I mean that also begs a question when you look at the lineage of the famed Wired article on the Cloud Foundry guys.
I'm the only one left.
Well, I was going to point out that half those guys were Google. They were ex Google. They seen behind the veil, if you will, and then they were sort of hired to craft this solution.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what Moritz wanted. He wanted super cloud scale experience, which is why things like, all of the things that are hot today because Google's working on them, a lot of them are already baked in.
So are you going to do the T robot, or what's going on over there?
Yeah, I'm making some tea because it's just me and you. Can I have some tea?
You can do whatever you need. I'm hoping we can get some other people in here. I mean, it's fun to talk to you, but we do this every night.
Um, like I said, I think it's the holiday break, and this is going to be the hangout that falls in the woods and no one knows.
Well, we'll just talk some more. I don't know how deep you want to go down the history rabbit hole, but I remember talking to you and seeing some of the stuff that was going on even before it was super public, and then after it was open source initially, I think it was interesting to see the dynamics of the community building or lack thereof under the regime and the kind of the styles and the clash of culture that you saw with Mark Lukowski and his Microsoft DNA, even though he'd been at Google, coming through to what we deal with now, where it's relatively open backlog, open pull request style open source product.
Well, I mean, not to go down a rat hole, but I think Cloud Foundry started off much more as Android, which was, hey, it's open source and we periodically update it and it's there for your consumption, less of a collaboration and a community and IP commons for a broad group of people. So that I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I mean, we even use the Garrett system. Like we were pretty much full Android in our embodiment. We were Android style OSS. Um, when you have one company that's willing to invest, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars into a project to build an industry standard, that can sometimes work.
I mean, there's plenty of Android phones right now.
Yeah. So I don't get into the more open or let's say more diverse is always better. Because you really ultimately want a common standards. Really, is what you really want that people can freely use.
And I wasn't really there for this internally, but I know some of the stories from different perspectives. As long as we're remembering the past, I kind of want to give a shout out to Ezra, who's not here anymore, and
Yeah,
he had an impact on Cloud Foundry and kind of the open story. So
yeah. Ezra, was there, and he was an advocate for open sourcing for sure, and he was also an advocate for the original micro Cloud Foundry. So I know you don't want to talk about a lot yet, but there's no one watching this, so we can say anything. This Lattice project, I really wish Ez was around to try that and to give us feedback on it, because he was always an advocate that developers needed a smaller version of the cloud of their own to develop on locally. And so Ezra was a champion of microcloud Foundry and also of open source, which are both very developer-friendly things.
And he was coming with the perspective of doing a bunch of open source projects already, the Rails and Merge stuff, and then he was really early in the kind of platform as a service vision with the engineer.
Yeah, I mean, Ezra had incredible empathy for what developers would want or need or use. And I think, he didn't last as long in the team as I had hoped, and part of that was just that he was as much of a pure engineer as some of the Google guys, right? Like he wasn't a strict, pure software engineer. He was really creative, high developer empathy, really experimental. But it was crazy that we lost Ezra and then James Gulak, and like the whole Northwest Ruby community is under like shell shock. I think it just feels like a gaping hole.
Yeah, that was someone we both spent some time with before. I wouldn't say we were. I mean, James was just like a real pure thinker, man, and he has like this is another fallen brother, man. It's like pour one out 2014, but
yeah,
everything I ever saw James do, or the times I got to spend with him, he was just a pure soul, and he was really like he valued pure tech, but he was a human being, and he cared about his fellow man.
Yeah, and it's been really contentious, like we had that kind of fuddy Red Hat piece that was written that was kind of fuddy. This idea that tech is some sort of mudslinging war between factions is not something I'm a huge fan of. I think inclusive evolution is a lot more interesting with hard technical challenges. But I love that, my only send off to Gulak, who trolled me a lot, to be fair. Like, like if I'd ever talk about using MongoDB or we have a MongoDB service, he'd be like, "Come on, Scro." I mean, that's a huge.
I troll you a lot.
So like, I didn't know Gulak well. I'd never met him in person, but we knew each other on Twitter a lot. And he just anytime I talk about some hipster thing that wasn't good tech, he'd just be like, "Come on, Scro."
So we got some more people. We got Matt, who just put himself on mute for some reason.
Who's SVDT?
I don't know. They haven't said a word yet.
I can talk, just so you know.
Who
are you, mystery caller?
Well, I got in here using a website formerly known as Hangout Snitch. I'll post it in the link. Basically, you can get access to any live Hangouts, private or not.
Well, good thing I put this publicly, so you had to go through all that trouble.
So overheard your conversation. It sounded pretty interesting. What are you guys talking about?
We're mostly talking about
I'm gonna
technology,
get my
in
tea.
particular Cloud Foundry, platforms, just year in review, talking a little bit right now about some of the people that sadly are no longer part of our community.
Oh.
And then our boy Matt Stein just joined as well.
Yo,
Oh.
I thought I'd drop in for a couple of minutes as long as I can keep myself away from the present opening that's going on, because I've already been through that once.
Matt, you might want to run. I have work questions for you. I haven't talked to you in a week, so I got lots of roadmap questions for you. We can turn this into a roadmap review. How's that coming on microservices?
Grimmer backlog.
Yeah, we can talk about that next week.
Sounds good to me, man.
I don't even know what I do for a job right now. I'm like totally immersed in this vacation thing.
I don't want to hear this.
It's not really vacation. It's like reintroducing myself to my kids and whatnot.
Like I said, I had a little idea. It's just the holidays. No one wants to work right now. Can you guys? I'm gonna make tea. Just give me.
The T robot needs its own hangout. We need a Twitter account for that.
Guy for my tea robot.
T-Robot.
Tweeting from the T robot.
I got something cool though.
Here I want to talk about the Spring Netflix open source.
We can talk about drones.
Stuff that's going on.
I got
You got a little quadcopter thing.
I got a little quadcopter drone thing. Been dive bombing people with it. It's pretty cool.
There you go.
Unfortunately, it's not one that you can actually. At least I haven't figured out how to like put Maverick code on it and.
Is it just
stuff wasn't
like a handheld RC thing?
Like this one, you have an app for like iPhone or Android, and you fly it around.
I see.
Talking
Should
Okay, I'll be down in a minute.
It's
Okay, I'll be down in a minute.
What are you doing?
we're doing a live hangout.
Hi, is this Matt Stein's wife?
Yeah, but we're like in the middle of family stuff, and he
See, I told you I snuck away.
Hi, I'm James.
Now I'm getting in trouble.
Mom. Yeah, you're in major trouble. Like,
That's
you can't
all
just
right.
disappear like that.
That was fun while it lasted.
Yeah. All right, I'll catch you later.
Sorry, he's getting scolded. I'm like, what are you doing?
Kids this season.
I knew that your charge into the holiday hangout. By the way, this is online right now. Andrew would end in
Nobody's watching.
humiliation and defeat.
All right, I'll see you later.
The night is young. We have not yet begun to fight.
It's okay. I mean, we had Matt getting busted by his wife and a random person who was impressed that he found a public link. It's been pretty epic.
What is even going on? Apparently people can't log into Twitter. That's the other funny thing.
We have so much cloud mojo, we just can't hold ourselves back.
I'm pretty excited about some of the stuff that Cloud Foundry is doing right now. And being able to connect a bunch of these dots, I think it kind of been latent features and functionality that haven't been exposed is really going to change what people understand about what's possible.
I think we got you to tweet your first feature, like you were actually excited about that feature, that metrics dashboard.
Well, that was pretty awesome.
I am so pumped about that. Like, why should you have all these custom-built pieces that work well together? Back to our very first conversation. I was like, no, you want all these pre-integrated pieces. You're like, why? Like, well, what if they start just extruding metrics from themselves and tell you everything about the app over time?
I mean, I was always in favor of instrumenting the different pieces. That was basically why I rage quit OpenStack. Is
All spawn a box.
the insistence that you are going to somehow have this secondary project to monitor and meter the primary project is ridiculous, particularly when most of what you're trying to measure is already events that are generated on a bus. I really feel like, I mean, if you look at what's going on, if you understand the things that are happening at the big web companies, you see some of the stuff that these SRE guys from Google are talking about at DevOps days, then the idea that you're going to kind of cobble together a bunch of stuff and it's not really self-aware is just kind of, I don't know, it seems like anachronistic in 2014 if you're really paying attention. What are you doing to the
I lost you.
page? What's going on?
Lost you. I can't see you. What's that? Yeah, the metric stuff was pretty exciting. And I updated my Twitter bio today, which is who cares, right? But I think it's pretty cool because we've now organized the Spring Source team, the RabbitMQ team, the Redis team, all as part of our cloud platform group. And more of our conversations start with, hey, I'm using Redis and RabbitMQ. I'm thinking about Bosch. We have different ways of starting conversations now as a cloud platform group. The Cloud Foundry already had Elastic Runtime plus Bosch plus some other stuff, but it's a pretty interesting set of technologies we have, and a pretty big R&D team. And I think that's why all these features should keep popping out, because we've had teams of 10 or 20 people, working in the back room on this stuff for a while.
So the other thing we haven't really had a hangout to discuss, which is pretty relevant to the whole narrative, is the formation of the Cloud Foundry Foundation.
Yeah, what did you think of that? I mean, you remember when I was working with IBM starting in 2000, I think April of 2013 is when IBM first approached us about making this a foundation so that they could build out Bluemix and make that big investment. And we went along with that kind of at a graduated, controlled pace, and you always had mixed feelings.
Well, I was just a little bit disappointed with the way the foundation story went in the other project I just mentioned, and particularly the pandering and compromise to the politics and vendors instead of just kind of focusing on the purity of the stewardship of the project. And I really feel like that suffered as a project because of it. And if you need proof, then I always point to DigitalOcean right now, that if you just look at a small team that's not focused on compromising the technology, that they'll outperform this this massive kind of meandering open source project. Not to get too...
That's somewhat fair, but DigitalOcean is also as a cost leader, and they have a very de-featured cloud. Like, it has none of the network features that
I guarantee that's fine. I guarantee there's a bunch of would-be cloud providers that went down the OpenStack rabbit hole that would love to be DigitalOcean right now. Guaranteed. But that's a side conversation. So,
but I think that's more of a market strategy question, which is, was OpenStack trying to take on too many features to even be DigitalOcean? Like, DigitalOcean is like, here's a slice. It doesn't have EBS. It doesn't have a lot of crazy network controls. Like, it is cheap slice hosting at a massive scale at an incredible cost.
I stand by my statement that there's a lot of OpenStack would-be providers that would love to be DigitalOcean right now. I don't think that's really debatable.
No, I don't. I'm just saying more of, is it a market strategy question too, right? Like, can there be only one? Like, is there one low-cost cloud? Is there one, API-driven cloud like Amazon? Right now, as much as I love Google, by the way, I've been a big Google fanboy for a while. I don't know if you saw Amazon.
I think the answer is that there won't be, that there will be more than one, but it's a capital-intensive game, especially at the high end of the scale. And if you want to compete on all those features, if you look at the broadness across something like Amazon at the scale and the feature set, there's not very many organizations that can compete at that level. I think Google's one of them. I think Microsoft's another one. And then it falls off pretty fast. And when you look at the platform story, with something like Cloud Foundry that enables to take advantage of the raw infrastructure with a common API and developer experience across a bunch of those platforms, and I think that's an interesting story. But just to have a competitive, I mean, a lot of people would love to have a competitive cloud, and they realistically could if they were more focused on enabling. So here's the long and short of it. It's like you see the features of something like Amazon, or you see the features of something like Netflix, and the enterprises or the startups that want to have those kind of features, they focus on the features, but they tend to miss the process and the culture that created them. If they replicated the cultural and process aspects, they'd have a better chance. So they try to rush to the superficial feature list instead of understanding like the ecosystem and the habitat that gave rise to those services.
Yeah, I think there's a market crucible that directs your priorities that a lot of the people are missing, and I think that crucible also dictates some cultural trade-offs that, again, I think you're saying. But I'm also interested, though, from the foundation perspective, though. A lot of people have said, well, the foundation will end in fragmentation. So I don't think a lot of people understand that because this is a very controlled launch of the foundation, we launched it with a really, there's an enterprise product that already exists based on this. So there's already a lot of people using it as a standard before it even went to foundation. And then Pivotal took a very aggressive stance and says there's not going to be any secret sauce in Pivotal Cloud Foundry. It's just going to be the same core as every Cloud Foundry. And to call something Cloud Foundry, it has to have the exact bits that are in the Cloud Foundry release. And we standardized on that at launch, as opposed to our good friend J. Mac McKenty, who's been chasing down the cat out of the bag in OpenStack for 2 years on the standardization there. So it was pretty funny to see. I think some of the more uninformed commentary came out of, I think, wishful thinking out of Red Hat's Paul. What's Paul's last name? The EVP of product at Red Hat. I haven't met him.
I'm not sure.
Paul Cormier, and he said, "Oh well, hey, it's just going to fragment." And I don't think people understand. Like, we've been paying attention, and the foundation is like, "Hey, here's one way to call it Cloud Foundry. It is the same core that's released weekly."
I mean, I don't even understand what fragmentation would mean in that context, because when you have the standard build packs that are in the community, okay, maybe like someone is going to add a build pack that's specific for something, and maybe like they're the only ones that have it, but for the most part, if you have that portability across the different runtimes, there's always going to be, if you go from one thing to another, if you don't have the services, if you don't have this thing, okay, maybe you don't have full portability, but if you stay...
Well, here's where it would break. Imagine that you don't include the routing tier. Like, this is one of the more controversial things. I think IBM wanted to include their own value-added router or something like that. But say you're doing a lifecycle command where you want to shape traffic, where like I want to add canary updates. That's a big passion of mine. If you're not able to have the exact same routing tier to shape traffic and to obey those same semantics across all the distributions, that can't be a universal command to, I need to shape traffic and do a canary update. So that would be a case where someone was like, I want to add value and swap out a standard component, and therefore you'd lose some of the compatibility.
I mean, I think part of it is also, the onus is on Cloud Foundry Core to just keep adding those features in such a way that it behooves you to stay close to the head of the project, right? Like if you start kind of forking and having these dangling branches that you're trying to make products on, and then that underlying value proposition increases, and you always have to go back and rebase or whatever, and it's painful merge, then it kind of behooves you to stay close to those bits. Like you don't want to do that too many times before you start to. I mean, we saw that over and over with the OpenStack as well, because people would say, oh, we're going to add value, they would end up on a dangling branch of some old release that they modified to get features, and then those features were added into the core, and then you got to go like sort it all out and backport, or do these like three-way merges to even make sense of it, and it's just a nightmare. Ask me how I know.
You and I were over in, I think since we did a hangout, we were over in Seoul and Tokyo talking about some Cloud Foundry.
Yeah, we did a week in Asia. It was crazy.
Yeah. How do you say hello again in Annyeonghaseyo?
Annyeonghaseyo.
Annyeonghaseyo is Korean.
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa, that's easy. And then Origato Yomatsu is thank you.
Arigato gozaimashita.
Origato is much, and then Yamatsu or Yomatsu.
Domo. You're off track here.
No, domo is much, or just thank you.
Or very.
Yeah, very. And then
Arigato is thank you.
Yeah, very thank you, and then Yomatsu is kind of like or I'm not good at saying it, is the standard pronunciation. But
Gozaimashita or gozaimasu, this is like honorific to like make it. And it's gozaimashita means it's past tense.
You went over there and presented in Japanese. You presented samurai as a metaphor for technological advances. Do you want to regale the zero people watching this?
I did go to Tokyo and go straight to the obscure samurai references in front of a bunch of Japanese businessmen in suits.
What did you tell them?
Well, what I talked to them about is basically a story that they're all familiar with, but when I was talking to the Pivotal Japan people and I was pulling like this particular reference out, they said no, we don't know this. It's like our history, but we don't know this particular reference. And then when I shared it with the crowd, everyone knows kamikaze because it's like this thing that saves Japan from the Mongolians. But before that, this particular kind of episode, that most of them aren't that familiar with it, but the Japanese island was invaded by the Mongolians twice, and it was a big change in the way that the Japanese had kind of conducted warfare. They'd never, at least to my knowledge, they'd never been invaded before the Mongolians showed up.
I didn't know the Mongols had boats. Like I think of them. Sorry, this is totally Sunday night digression. I always pictured the Mongols on horseback, like going across the flats.
So that's a great point, and it's probably one of the reasons why the things happen the way they happen, because they weren't necessarily a naval power.
Right.
And they probably had a lot more experience with the boats. I watched some other documentaries and I read some stuff about this too, but the boats are designed to go kind of in the deep sea, have these deep keels that go into the waves, so when big waves come, they can kind of ride the waves. But the boats you put on rivers don't have deep keels because you can't go upriver. And so the Mongolians were probably more used to the river style of boats, and so they were particularly susceptible to the heavy waves, the tsunami, kamikaze setup. So both times Japan was basically saved by big storms that sunk a bunch of these boats. Anyway, the real part of the story is that.
Beside, drew a pretty famous picture of the waves off of Japan.
Don't you have it hanging on your wall right next to you?
I do. It's in my bedroom in full size.
Why is this thing beeping? Hold on one second. I'm gonna do a little experiment. Let's see if that helps. Anyway, so the story is that before the Mongolians came, this is also relevant to a bunch of other things that are happening in the industry. Because before the Mongolians came, the Japanese had ritualized warfare, and that's not unique to Japan, right? Lots of cultures, and even today, there's sort of rules of engagement. And the Japanese ritualization of warfare meant that you had as sort of like a sporting event where you came out with both sides, and someone would read the lineage of some samurai. They would read their accomplishments and their father and their father's father, and then someone from the other side would read a similar scroll, and then they would resolve basically a duel, and that was kind of like a warfare, and it keeps you from killing everyone basically. And when the Mongolians came, they weren't actually that concerned with who your father or your grandfather were, and in fact, they just wanted to kill you, not just you, but everyone next to you. So what's that?
They were a horde, if you will, a golden one.
Mongolian horde, exactly. So they were also, so that before the Mongolians, the Japanese had no experience against hardened armor. They typically fought in cloth. They had no experience with maneuvering massive amounts of troops, either as a military or against that kind of an attack. And then they'd also never before the Mongolians, if you shot a man with an arrow, at least according to my reading, then that was considered cowardly because you couldn't touch them and they couldn't touch you. The only kind of samurai way to engage in combat was to be within the harm, the reach of their harm, basically. So when you shot an arrow at someone, that was so cowardly, right? And so they had a long tradition of bows, but they used them in a very different way. It's almost like this meditative, one arrow, one target, touch the target with the arrow, sort of Buddhist or Budo style. But then the Mongolians come and they're just like, we don't care. We have a lot of arrows, and they just would shoot like volleys. They're not even aiming. They just shoot them down range, and then it would kind of wreak havoc on the Japanese notion of war. So then the way that this all gets resolved is, one, they get saved by the winds, but going forward, you change the dynamic where, and this is where I think it's kind of dovetails. I didn't bring this out in Japan, but you no longer had to be born a samurai, right? Like you didn't have to be. It obviously class still mattered, and still mattered for quite some time after this. But if you could fight, then you could be a warrior, right? Where before that was very hereditary, and that's sort of happening now in tech, because if you can make computers do things, like who doesn't want to hire you right now?
Yeah, WhatsApp had none of the installed telecom brand or none of the lineage of billions of dollars of telco behind it. It had a couple people writing some efficient Erlang and just letting everyone around the world talk, and pretty much did what the Mongolians did to text messaging in a couple of years, right?
I mean, outside of Marissa Mayer, pretty much anyone who wants to get up and program some computers and can do it. I mean, some of the best programmers I know right now, they don't have degrees, or they don't have degrees from fancy schools. They just have a passion, and they have a talent, and they're willing to make it work. And I think you see that over and over again.
Hold on, Robin is trolling us but not joining. She needs to hop on.
I think she might be watching the video from afar, but she should join us.
Yeah. See if she has any hangout game.
Let's see her hangout game. Yeah. She's over there, Elasticsearch now. That's a cloud technology.
Yeah, we should be doing more with them. Everybody likes to use Elasticsearch to look at all of our outstream or our egress.
The log aggregation.
Yep. So, but what are your real? Let's be honest. Like, it's cool that we did some storytelling over there.
I mean, the whole point of that story was I told the story because there's a real famous quote from this Hachiman Gadoken where the samurai is lamenting that these Mongolians, they don't follow our conventions. They don't pay any regard to these conventions of warfare. And so then what I did in my talk is I just outlined this story that basically every Japanese knows how the ending, and this, I had this quote from the Hachiman Godokan about the Mongolians disregarding their scrolls or disregarding their conventions, and then at the end of or about 2/3 of the way through the talk, after I kind of went through the rise of ITIL and the big web, and how, on one side of the wall you have the enterprise who's adopted the library. This is our ITIL methodology, and it's complicated, and it's slow. It doesn't necessarily help them. And then the big web guys who didn't really adopt that at all, or tried to, and then rejected it because it failed them, moving to basically make the argument that the Amazon, and this is the quote, I basically took the same words that the samurai used and changed them to be Amazon. It's like Amazon doesn't configure one server at a time. That's our conventions, our ITIL methodology. Amazon's not paying any attention to.
You realize that was the exact same dynamic when the Gatling gun, which is another of your favorite weaponry, it wasn't adopted at first because it was thought that people wouldn't aim appropriately if they used a weapon that fired too much. That was essentially the argument against it when it was not adopted at first. It was like, oh, well, people wouldn't aim appropriately if they fired so fast.
Turns out you don't really need to aim that well.
Sometimes speed and the ability just to deploy something matters a bit.
It's certainly the basis for Boyd's OODA loop, right? Cycles and disrupting the other person's cycles.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't have appreciation for how expensive a deploy is in the average Fortune 500 company, and not in the special ops teams. Like, a lot of them have built like a special team to do certain projects, but the average.
It's terrible.
But why is it terrible?
I think that there's a level of complexity that is inherent in some of the old architectures, and kind of coupling and cobbling together features that are trying to quote unquote take advantage of all these value added things at the level of the storage and the networking. And there's actually an interesting talk from reInvent, one of my favorite people in this space, James Hamilton, gave about how networking is going in the wrong direction. And so what I think people get enamored with features, and their trade-off is that they have to pay for that complexity, and they also haven't been very disciplined, and so they don't have any real standardized way to do things, and so they kind of reinvent it every single time. I mean, I've been part of this, right? I've probably built a dozen platforms for deploying software over the last decade, and each of them learned different things from the previous attempt, and they became more simple and less clever. And I think that the inherent architectures and the inherent technology themselves actively resist automation. There's a certain aspect of it that just requires like feeding.
A lot of people say, well, if we don't have a human intervention in every step, how can I control an audit? So.
Well, honestly, if you do have a human at every step, how can you actually control an audit? That's the flip of that, right? What's going to give you a more certain outcome? Something that consistently does the same thing over and over and over and records every step of that, or a human being that's been doing this tedious thing for 3 hours now and wants to go home?
Yep. So I think one other story I'd tell is we talk about microservices, yada, 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 and the cost of deploys. There's a gentleman came in that was running mobile at a very large, Fortune 100, but he still had to go through the WebSphere application server team. Always had to have one of them on to do a deploy. So they put everything that they had to do into one WAR file, like always, because it was so expensive per deploy. So actually, when we talk about microservices, it's not just to be hipster about it. It's actually that people have been forced into monoliths, not because they even wanted to design their software that way, but their organization forced them to design their software that way because deploys were so expensive. It's almost like it's not so much about microservices as actually finally allowing people to have the design that they want.
So what it's actually about, if we're going to be fully buzzword compliant, but I think this is reality, is it's actually about continuous delivery. And microservices is an outgrowth of trying to do that. So when you start to look at the way microservices decouple the different features and functionality and allow you to do things incrementally, then you get to have this continuous model where if you're going to have a high fixed cost for each delivery, then it's by definition a high fixed cost for each delivery.
Yeah, I mean that's the opponent of microservices is actually John Allspaw, who uses PHP, which nothing against PHP, and he's like, look, we deploy it as one big thing, but we do that continuously, and we don't even need microservices because our pipeline is so efficient that continuous delivery is a feature of our process. So we don't care if it's in one file or 10.
I think part of it there is, and this is the rub, right? Like your technology choices have impact on the rest of your processes. And when you're talking about PHP deployment, then really you're just talking about putting a file in a folder and it's deployed. Like it's not the same thing as putting a jar into these beasts of an app server and then like having to restart a bunch of stuff or like having.
I didn't want to be the one to pick on PHP because that crew.
No, I'm not picking on PHP. It's actually one of the better features of PHP. That's not picking on PHP at all.
I'm just saying I didn't want to.
If anything, I mean that PHP has some advantages, and that's one of them. That in a sense you're able to do deployments of a single file, and it's a monolithic deployment because they're doing all of them at once. But really, if you're just replacing one file, small change sets in essentially, I mean, it could be a Git repository on a server, then that's a pretty low bar to get to a deployment.
Yep. I haven't written PHP since 2001, so I'm dated enough that I won't even wade into it.
I mean, this is where you see all these interesting discussions happening right now, because there's a big part of the developer conversation where they're like, well, we don't understand the point of microservices. It's just like object-oriented programming, or it's just like functions or whatever. And I think that's a naive perspective that is only seeing code at rest and not code in motion, because code in a service-oriented world in 2014 doesn't exist until it's running on servers. And we need to shift our mindsets as organizations and as developers from thinking that code is done when you finish a story to the code is done when the last server loses power. And right now, I think that transition is only, obviously anyone who's kind of tapped into the DevOps consciousness is following that plot, but there's still lots of philosophical misunderstandings about what microservices are enabling. And to me, most of the benefits of microservices actually are operational. And so when people start having these conversations about architecture and why does it matter and why is it different, it's because they're not seeing the full picture of operationalizing the code. They're just seeing the kind of abstractions of the code at rest.
Oh, lots there. I want to kick another topic out though. Is that we had a pretty good demo of the HA MySQL.
Robin made it.
Gosh, she actually responded to my Twitter troll over.
We need more. Oh, we got light. There we go. It's the Elasticsearch.
Anya Hasio.
What?
You missed the earlier part when we were saying that we were just in Korea and Japan for a week. And those are the two ways of saying hi in Korea and Japan.
Ah, bonjour. Hello.
Bonjour.
And that's what you were obsessing about.
No, we're obsessing about lots of other things. That was a small stop.
We're obsessed about this whole technology evolution around distributed systems meet cloud access kind of paradigms.
We're obsessed with the sun never setting on Cloud Foundry.
Yeah. So I was just about to talk about some data services, but maybe Robin, you want to introduce yourself, say hi. There's no one watching this, by the way, so you don't have to worry. It's Sunday night on a holiday, so it's like the.
So we'll the three of us will just pretend that this is being watched by millions of people, but.
No, it's so much more fun when no one watches. Actually.
It's there for posterity.
Someday when we're super famous, people will look back at this and go, "Holy crap!"
No, I peaked in 2012, so I'm just enjoying.
It's all downhill. It's all downhill from here.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name's Rob Bergeron. I'm a developer advocate at Elasticsearch. I've been there for like a month, so don't ask me what that means yet. Before that, I was at your favorite place, Red Hat, home of many trolls to you guys.
Those guys don't like me, Robin.
I don't work there anymore.
Why don't they like me? Did you ever hear someone in the hallway just be like, "God darn it"?
I just avoided going to the office altogether. It's in another state.
I mean, it's kind of like a jilted ex is the only way I can describe like their blogs about us, which is like 10 reasons I'm glad you dumped Waters James.
The one, whenever it was last week or 2 weeks ago, I mean, I think the first sentence was like, here's why we're better than them, but this is not about that. It's completely about something else, but, you know, I'm going to repeat that statement every other sentence. I didn't think that was that's not how I would have written it.
I just like logic and data as much as possible, and then, you know,
research before writing.
Obviously, people have emotional attachment to things, and you know, you want to root for your team and wear the jersey and all that, and that's fine. But there's a bunch of stuff going on, and you're not gonna turn the tide of the whole market with that kind of stuff, I think.
Yeah. So
what is
I cannot explain what the personality dynamics are there that lead to.
I feel like it was what was weird about it. I want to talk about.
I think they believe that they're being trolled back, if that helps.
They were being what?
I think they also feel like they are occasionally trolled back at.
I never think of them. Like, honest to gosh, I swear to God, we got. I never even think of them. And then the other day, a customer handed me this. He was like, "Hey, by the way, just so you know, Red Hat gave me this 58-slide deck of why not Cloud Foundry." And I'm like, wow, like I would never ask our people to spend the time it takes to make a 58-slide deck dissing them.
Did it all end up with because it doesn't run on RHEL?
Yeah, and then they're like, as someone else joked, like that's the most Oracle-esque argument you can possibly make, which is that this new technology is broken because it doesn't run on our old certified thing.
With our kernel from 2009 or whatever.
Yeah. And the only complaint I have, the only reason it gets me going, to the extent it gets me going, is it creates rampant misinformation in the market. Like, I don't mind being picked on. It's actually when you uneducate the market that you'll rouse my, you'll get me kind of groused. Right. And right now, you cannot run Docker and all of this new stuff that they claim to be using, which they're not even in it yet, on the existing like RHEL 2.6 kernel. Like, you cannot do it. Do not do it. Like, you must have known this when you're on Fedora, right? You can't run containers on old school RHEL. Like, all the libraries are not up to date. There's bugs.
I worked on Fedora because you can do all that shit there.
So it's like they're like Docker, which we support, by the way. We love Docker. We even support this other thing, Rocket. We want to support them all. And they're like, yeah, Docker, Docker, Docker.
Rocket's the new thing from. Is that from the CoreOS guys or is that from the Docker folks?
Schaefer was involved in talk about it.
We haven't had a hangout since Rocket happened, or did we? It's been so long. So I can't believe it hasn't even been a month since Rocket was announced. Seems like forever.
Yeah, that was like the end of the first week of December, I think, was when
I
Dr.
think it was
Khan
December 4th. But I also think, I mean, that's, I don't know which rat hole we're going down right now, but
all the rat holes.
I think
all
we're
the rat
kicking the
holes.
Red Hat can right now just because we have an ex-Red Hatter just popped in with her little Christmas tree of lucite and bulbs frozen inside of it.
I just
Yes.
think it's kind of interesting that there's all this exuberance around containers when, one, that's a silly name for what is essentially just process isolation, and two, like, it's not new. It's like everything about that tech has been in the kernel for ages.
Let's not get into a hipster debate about containers before anyone else because I'll crush all of you because I was working on them in Solaris in 2005, so just stop there. Like, you guys lose.
BSD had them before.
Wait, but did Sun OS have the notion of containers? Because then that would be especially old school.
Oh, well, I mean, look, it did not have them on x86. I'm talking about containers in x86, and yes, BSD probably is even before that, but
I'll go get a PBR right now. It's cool.
yeah, right. I'm just saying, like, just trim the mustache a little bit. Let's not go down that rat hole. So, Robin, now you decided to go maybe more pure developer. I mean, if you want to talk about a technology that's popular with developers, it's Elasticsearch. Because you're like, well, why do I need a full database for everything? Why don't I just throw it in Elasticsearch and pull it out?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting going from the OS world over to the software world. I think a lot of it, not to drag you guys back into a subject that you've probably already gone down at some point, either tonight or in the past, but the whole, when you work on an operating system, everything is very much about packaging, and the packaging must be perfect. And you get out here into developer land, and they're just like, screw it. I'm just going to, package it and dump it wherever the heck I please and, slap it wherever I please in my operating system. And it's like we do all this work on the operating systems to make everything perfect, and nobody else really cares. I spent a bunch of time doing using Ansible to deploy Elasticsearch into EC2, which I thought would be easy, but turned out was less awesome than I thought it was going to be. Starting with, there's no Fedora anything, it's all Ubuntu, and that's like a sad blog post to write when your last job was as the Fedora project leader. Here I am at my new job, and I don't give a shit about Fedora anymore. No, that's not really true.
Ubuntu won the Cloud OS thing, sadly.
Yes, well, yes.
I mean, it's an outsider to the OS game. Like, we have no, like, I'm friends with Mark Shuttleworth. I like those guys. I like Ubuntu. I have no axe to grind there, but
yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. I do wonder if that's ever going to turn into a profit.
He doesn't need it to. It's all for fun.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to make a
But
dollar.
he needs to go to space again. Come
No,
on.
he already could.
So here's a question for you. Why doesn't Fedora have community supported AMIs for all this stuff on Amazon right now?
As in all this stuff, there are Fedora AMIs on Amazon. We're not in the Amazon marketplace.
Whatever you're complaining about, why wasn't it easy?
I think part of it was, hey, I haven't used Ansible before. This is supposedly going to be so easy, and yeah, it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. Mostly because once I figured out what I was doing, then it was easy. But I was trying to stack too many things together and solve too many problems with.
It's because configuration
too many hammers and that kind of shit. But why don't we have any AMIs for that? Fuck if I know. It took us forever to even get AMIs. Release engineering is a continual fun issue over there. But
what'd you say, Waters?
It's the first F-bomb ever on the Cloud Hangouts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
No one heard it. It's the holiday hangout. It's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's awesome.
It's virgin ears.
I've never sworn on Twitter, but who knew?
No.
I took like one of those little tests, like, hey, how dirty is your mouth on Twitter? and it searched all of my tweets, never once. Here's my request for Elasticsearch. So we're working on an Elasticsearch service over in our London office. We've actually been talking with Elasticsearch about how to do it better. Elasticsearch, when it sets itself into clusters, is still built for more of a developer API-centric and less from an operations-centric perspective. So I think there is room for Elasticsearch to improve according to being like very declarative in its setup and easier to operate. And I'm hoping you guys can help us beat that drum, because we would love to put a great Elasticsearch service in CF that just developers can start up and it runs with regularity. And today, our feedback from our team is, hey, there's a little bit of room to go there on stability.
Okay, that's interesting. Have they talked anything about like having it magically scale or any of that kind of jazz, or just get it working? That would be nice.
I'll get you the whole feedback. It's sort of it's something that you discover when you start trying to automate data services, is if they're friendly to declarative deployment, or if they need a little imperative fixers along the way that are not comfortable with declarative kind of setup the way we think about managing services. So I think that's the fascinating thing, and this even happened in Redis. So I need to talk to Salvatore, because when our team that's automating cloud services looked at Redis, we found that there were a bunch of imperative steps currently in Redis cluster that were harder to automate. It's my current axe to grind with the data services industry.
So this goes back to my days, in the configuration management wars. But at what point does this quality of software become a Darwinian thing, where if it's too hard to automate it, or it's a differentiator because it's easy to automate it, that we lose these kind of features and we get to like a very new world?
I think I'm going to venture a guess here, and you guys can shoot me down. We talked to Bloomberg this last week, and they have 3,200 developers, and like their ops team is like under 100. And so if you have a good developer experience for your product, it affects a lot more people than a bad operational experience. And so products have tended to launch faster into the market if a good developer API, developer-facing features, and it's less costly if you still throw humans at the operations problem. I think MongoDB is the ultimate example of that, right? Like they were like, hey, cool, and then operating it, the failover it, management of it was left to the imagination.
So I agree with everything you said.
Well, okay. So that's the question: is how do we start a crisis of, operations quality matters when?
How do you move along evolution?
Yeah,
I think one of the things that makes it evolve is it's actually like good operational software doesn't get linearly or exponentially more difficult to manage as you scale.
As you scale.
And one of the things that's happening now is that you're getting where the things that the enterprise used to have to deal with were maybe like one little database, like maybe they had a big database for systems of record, but they weren't these highly transactional online things that were always really under load. And so now, as you're starting to see the enterprises move into this connected Internet of Things, data-driven reality, then I think that the overhead of scaling those things, and this kind of goes back to the deployment argument you were making as well, right? Like if the fixed cost of managing this stuff is high, then it starts to make a difference at scale. If you're at a low scale, then yeah, okay, like what's one more guy? You have these big budgets, you have these big teams, let's just rub some blood and sweat on it and make it work. But at the scale that I think a lot of the enterprises are going to be at in the next few years, I think it starts to make a big difference.
I think it's going to be interesting getting our Redis and Elasticsearch services right over the next year, and we'll see what we can do. I think it will matter, but we'll see. I do think that a lot of things, even Docker, by the way, the developer experience is cool. The developer's like, hey, I started it, I deployed it, good luck, has left a lot of the operational experience.
I did this once on my laptop. It must be perfect.
Yeah, and so it's like you watch that come through like a hurricane.
Just move it into production?
Right. Which, exact same dynamics, which is if it makes the horde of developers happy and it puts a burden on ops, it continues to make a lot of news, which is fine. Like making developers happy is super important. But when you think about long-term costs of each incremental piece of software you deploy, that's a more complex game.
Truly.
So,
I mean, I think.
are you okay, Robin? Are you?
I just inhaled a piece of reindeer corn. Don't mind me.
I was worried you'd been poisoned by the Red Hat people, like that they had were
It's
about to get the
possible.
revenge on you.
At any moment, my significant other could walk from over at his desk and poison me, because he still works there.
He does?
He does. Yes.
Oh, smack.
Does he want a new job?
You know we're hiring?
I've heard that you guys are hiring. Yes.
We have.
Oh. So Tony Hansman works for you guys.
He's badass.
So can I tell you my Tony Hansman story?
Please. He is like the Bosch master.
Yes. So in 1997, probably 1997, I went to my first day at my job at Motorola Computer Group in Tempe, Arizona, where I was going to be working at the help desk. This was a very, very long time ago. We had AIX machines and System 5. Yeah, it was terrible. Anyways, I immediately figured out how to get onto the internal IRC network, and this guy was like, "Oh my God, you're the new girl. We heard that there was a girl here who knew Unix." And he came over, and I was like, "Oh my God, there's this tall, dreamy guy." And talked to him, and yeah, so this was Tony. He took me over to his desk, and then I saw a picture of him and his new bride, and then
Tony broke your heart?
well,
Day one at your job?
well, it wasn't like, I think he's, more older and mature than I am, possibly, at least one of those. But anyways, yeah, we worked together for several years. I learned a lot of stuff from him.
Yeah, next time you're out in San Francisco, you should stop in. I bring Tony in as a non-salesy kind of person if people want to understand about automation and Bosch.
Yes.
He is basically like, stop playing around, like either declaratively automate the full.
Well, he's like the credible guy, right? It's not like I'm here to sell it. It's like I actually use it and I'm an ops guy. And
no, he's almost awkwardly, stubbornly insistent that you're an idiot unless you do exactly as he tells you. Like he doesn't soften the blow. He's like, I don't know what you're thinking.
No, he is all about, he and Mike Gilbert, who I don't know if he's still friends with them, but they were all about the bluntness. Like, if you are too dumb to use this, you should just go shoot yourself. Yeah. Just get it over with.
He's great. So Tony runs all of Pivotal Web Services with like 2 people, tens of thousands of applications, all with like all with our automation. So that's pretty exciting.
Yep. Sorry, I just had that, I wanted to, "Hi, Tony, you're so awesome."
I'll tell him.
I was just like amused when I saw. I was like, "Oh my God, he works there. That's hilarious! Like, such a small world."
So I don't want to go back and beat on the discourse for a second. When you're talking to these people and they have 3,200 developers and 100 ops guys, what do they think the quality of service is from their operations, and do they have any complaints about their quote unquote IT traditional DevOps divide, or is it all they love everything about it?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking Waters, but you can.
Okay.
We just got a pro Bosch tweet from a guy named Tim McKinnon, who I don't know. Like, fascinated what Pivotal is doing at Cloud Foundry and Bosch. Like, Bosch is going to be big next year. Watch out.
Bosch is the platform.
Yeah, it's like the Red Hatters think that they're competing with Elastic Runtime. They're really competing with Bosch. They don't know it. So, the secret weapon of Tony's secret IaaS wielding daemon is what he calls it.
Yes.
Have you heard him say that?
I have seen him tweet it. Yes.
Yeah. He's not kidding. He made that up. Like, there's no marketing to that. That's just like an ops guy getting fired. He's like the teenager revving his engine at the stoplight when he talks about Bosch.
No, he's a good guy. That's funny.
I'm going to give a talk about Bosch in the beginning of February.
Are you guys going to FOSDEM?
I'm thinking about it. I'm
Better.
definitely going to go to configuration management camp right
Yeah.
after, and then.
Where's Boston this year?
What's that?
Where's it at?
It's always in
Brussels.
Brussels, I think.
Yeah, I thought so.
I'm thinking about doing monkey grass, FOSDEM, configuration management camp.
Yeah, so Monkey Gras is like, it's what, Thursday and Friday, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it's
And then
Thursday,
you gotta
Friday.
take the train. Except then you miss the Friday night activities, or you miss part of Monkey Gras. The thing is I thought about it going to Monkey Gras, and I think I'm going to pass, because starting off that entire week of FOSDEM and then configuration management camp and all that with a conference that is half devoted to drinking beer, just as before you go to Brussels and drink beer nonstop, just seems like bad for my liver or bad for my FOSDEM experience.
A lot of beer.
It is a lot of beer.
Aren't we going to announce
I'm
some
not
big
21
hire,
anymore.
Monkey Gras Schaefer?
We might be hiring someone.
Yeah, I think we're going to make some news at Monkey Gras.
Oh.
No one's watching this hangout, so I can hint about it, and no one will ever know.
Someone who may or may not be associated with someone who is associated with Monkey Gras might work for Pivotal.
Maybe someone who might be associated with Red Monk previously. Maybe someone really good.
Someone who, I was going to say, someone who really likes beer? Is it someone who really likes Gentoo?
No.
Oh.
We're not going to give any further hints.
That would have been like the most obvious hint ever, though.
Yeah, it's not Donnie.
We love Donnie, though.
Yeah, we love some Donnie, but he's in a good space. All right, Shafe, it's like no one's watching, so let's at least turn off the recording, and we can keep bugging.
Yeah, that was a good hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll do it again. Maybe next time we'll invite people before we start.
I think it's better when there's no one on.
Just going with the free flow. We'll see how people watch it.
Yeah, it's kind of just the crappy time of year, because everyone's like comatose in bed from wrapping presents and shit. Oh, see, there's twice now.
So I guess we'll get back to not doing work then. I don't know about you guys, but I'm trying to get a bunch of stuff done before the end of the year.
I'm working all week. I can't wait.
I got things I need to have happen in 2015.
I've got
Expense reports.
I've got $75 million of R&D budget to deploy over the next year and hundreds of people to hire. I'm busy. It's crazy.
You should get some containers to deploy that money. Just big crates of cash. Just automate it.
I thought about like just stacking it all up in the office.
I can automate that for you. Just send me the money. And
Show the team how serious we are about our investments. Just like bring it in like game show style at the beginning of the year. Be like, here's the money we're going to disperse this year to make.
So you guys are going to the Linux Foundation.
Linux Foundation, yeah, is a part of the Cloud Foundry.
Part of it. So are you guys going? Is this going to be like you're going to work at the foundation, or you guys will continue to be employed by Pivotal and other people will be employed by the foundation, or are they just helping run things?
That's another thing that's coming. Is there's going to be an amazing executive director for the Cloud Foundry Foundation. Who
crazy town good.
Like it will be shockwaves when we get it announced like that. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, but to be clear, Robin, I've been working.
No, I'm not trying to troll. I'm just curious.
I've been working on CF for a long time, and my original gig was like ecosystem of it. But I'm not going to go to the foundation. Like Sparky Collier, he left Rackspace to go work on the foundation when they made that.
Yeah.
Like I'm just a frankly responsible for the business at Pivotal of CF. So I wouldn't go to the foundation. That's not really my gig.
We work for Pivotal, and we have we unapologetically want to productize Cloud Foundry.
Yeah.
Right.
But we recognize the benefit of having that foundation and the rest of the ecosystem that enables. And we will do a lot of things probably in conjunction with that ecosystem and the foundation. But our goal is to productize Cloud Foundry for Pivotal.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious because you mentioned Sparky. I remember when they started talking about, is OpenStack going to have a foundation? I was like, why the hell would any of these people want to like leave their jobs with stock options and, medical insurance and, to go work for?
Well,
I mean, to be fair, the OpenStack Foundation and the Cloud Foundry Foundation will have resources.
yeah, Cloud Foundry Foundation has $7 million a year in funding, so I'm pretty sure anyone who works there
but
can have
I mean,
medical insurance.
You can buy a lot of medical insurance for $7 million.
Indeed, you can. But
Anyway, with that,
there is still something nice about, working for especially when they were first starting off with the foundation, when it was sort of like, it's up to you guys to make it work.
I mean, to be honest, though, I don't think that was. I thought the same thing at the time, but I think Rackspace has done not amazing since that time. So maybe for Sparky wasn't a bad move, and he's part of something pretty big now.
Yeah.
Shout out to him if he ever watches this the whole way to an hour and 20 minutes of an on-watch.
We're an hour and 13, so we'll call it. We can still sit and chat. We'll see if anyone watches it, and if they don't, that's fine.
All right. Good night.
And with that.